A tiny coin 10 cents in value, but for a few rare Roosevelt dimes, that number grows to 5 figures, if you know what to look for, because hidden in plain sight, these unassuming coins have stunned collectors and rewritten the value of pocket change, and the most surprising part. Some of them are still out there, waiting to be discovered in everyday hands. Number 1 coin. Have you ever held a dime in your hand and wondered if there's more to it than meets the eye? It's a coin we barely think about, small, simple, tossed into pockets and change jars without a second thought. But what if I told you there's a particular dime out there, minted in 1967, that looks like any other, yet holds a secret most people completely overlook? Stay with me, because by the time we reach the end of this story, you may be checking every dime you come across. Let's rewind the clock to 1967, an era of major transformation in the United States. The Vietnam War was escalating, protests were sweeping the nation, and cultural change was everywhere. But in the quiet halls of a U.S. mint, a quieter revolution was taking place, one that would impact every coin in the pockets of everyday Americans. Up until the mid-1960s, U.S. dimes were made of 90% silver. But that changed in 1965, when the mint transitioned to a more affordable copper-nickel composition. The reason? The price of silver was climbing fast, and people were hoarding coins. Entire rolls of dimes were vanishing from circulation, not because people needed them, but because they knew the silver content alone was worth more than 10 cents. To combat this, the mint made a decision: from 1965 to 1967, no coins would carry mint marks. That meant collectors couldn't tell where the coins were produced. No Denver, D, no San Francisco, S, not even a Philadelphia, P. It was a move designed to throw collectors off the scent, and it worked. But it also had an unintended consequence: it added an element of mystery. All 1967 dimes were struck without a mint mark. They looked uniform, plain, and, on the surface, unspectacular. But for those who knew what to look for, not all dimes were created equal. Even in a sea of billions, a few stood out. Some because of how they were made, and others because of how they slipped through with rare and astonishing errors. Let's talk about the design for a moment. The Roosevelt dime was first introduced in 1946, just a year after President Franklin D. Roosevelt passed away. It was a tribute to his leadership and his role in founding the March of Dimes. The obverse features his left-facing profile, strong, composed, and instantly recognizable. On the reverse, a torch, an olive branch, and an oak branch, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. But by 1967, what mattered wasn't just the design. It was the condition, the anomalies, and the backstory. During this time, the U.S. Mint produced special mint sets, also known as SMS, for collectors. These weren't foolproof sets, but they were far better than the coins being handed out at your local grocery store. Each SMS dime had a sharper strike, a smoother surface, and a distinctive satin-like finish. They weren't mass-produced like regular dimes, and they weren't meant to be spent. Finding one today in pristine condition is a collector's dream. And then, of course, there are the errors. Errors are like fingerprints: they're unpredictable, unique, and often overlooked. A misaligned die, a clipped planchet, an off-center strike, these mistakes can turn an ordinary coin into an extraordinary find. And 1967 dimes, despite being minted in enormous quantities, are no exception. Some feature doubling on the lettering or numbers. Others show unusual ridges, cracks, or shifts, signs that something went slightly wrong during the minting process. For the trained eye, these errors are gold. Now let's talk condition. In numismatics, condition is everything. Most 1967 dimes you'll find today are scratched, worn, or tarnished from decades of circulation. But occasionally, one turns up that looks almost untouched: bright luster, sharp details, no contact marks. These coins get graded, usually by services like PCGS or NGC, on a scale up to 70. A 1967 dime graded MS-67 or MS-68. That's entering the realm of rarity, and rarity equals value. Most people wouldn't give a second thought to a 1967 dime. They see it as a common, disposable piece of change. But hidden among those billions of dimes are just a few, just a tiny handful, that are different. A perfect storm of flawless condition, rare characteristics, and historical significance has turned some of these coins into the holy grail of Roosevelt dimes, and here's where things get truly astonishing. Among all known 1967 Roosevelt dimes with no mint mark, one stands at the top. A coin that defies expectations. Impeccably preserved, uniquely rare, and authenticated at the highest grade levels, this single dime recently made headlines in the numismatic world. It didn't come from a museum, a private vault, or an auction house. It was once just pocket change, until someone looked closer. That tiny, 10-cent coin, this seemingly insignificant sliver of metal, was valued at an incredible $98,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. A single 1967 Roosevelt dime, no mint mark, sold for nearly $100,000. Not because it was silver. Not because it was rare when minted. But because of what it became over time, a survivor, a gem, a treasure hidden in plain sight. So the next time you reach into your change jar, pause. Look a little closer. That humble dime could be more than just spare change, it could be a silent witness to history, a piece of a forgotten era, and just maybe, a life-changing discovery waiting to happen, because in the world of coin collecting, you never know which piece of metal might just be worth its weight in gold. Number 2 on our list today might just be the dime that no one saw coming. It's small, lightweight, and looks like 100 others you've probably handled this week. But sometimes, the most valuable things in life are the ones hiding in plain sight. The 1977 Roosevelt dime from the Denver Mint, marked with a simple D, might seem forgettable. But don't be fooled. Beneath that unassuming surface is a numismatic mystery, a historic survivor, and for one lucky collector, a jackpot that at first glance, this coin gives away nothing. The face is familiar, Roosevelt in profile, calm and confident. The reverse shows a torch between olive and oak branches, as it has since 1946. The edge is reeded. The metal is clad. It's the kind of coin you could easily hand over without a second thought, for a parking meter, a pack of gum, or nothing at all. But what if that little coin was worth thousands? What if, instead of 10 cents, it could buy you a car, or maybe even a down payment on a home? Let's rewind. In 1977, the United States was still recovering from the aftershocks of economic instability. The dollar was losing value. Gasoline prices fluctuated wildly. And inflation was a word every American knew by heart. Still, the mint kept moving forward. Coins were being produced at full speed, particularly in Denver, where over 376 million dimes rolled off the presses that year. But here's where things get interesting. While most of these dimes were meant for fast, mass circulation, used, abused, and quickly forgotten, a tiny number were different. Some were never spent. Others were stored by collectors, intentionally or by accident. And a select few emerged from the mint with something extraordinary, flawless condition. No scratches, no nicks, no contact marks. Bright luster. Razor-sharp details. Perfection in metal. The grading world refers to these coins as mint state, or MS. And the higher the number, MS 65, MS 66, MS 67, the more desirable the coin becomes. Once you hit MS 68, you're in elite territory. Only a sliver of coins ever make it there. It's not just rare. It's virtually unheard of. And with rarity comes value, but condition is only part of the story. Let's talk about what really gets collectors excited. Errors. The 1977 D Roosevelt dime is already rare in high grades. But when you add an error, especially a dramatic one, you've got something special. Some of these dimes left the Denver Mint with wild variations. Think off-center strikes where part of the design spills off the planchet. Double dies that create a ghost-like image around the lettering or Roosevelt's face. Strikes on the wrong type of metal. Even capped die errors that leave the obverse dome-shaped and eerily distorted. Each error is like a fingerprint. No two are ever exactly alike. And the scarcer the error, the more the coin becomes a showstopper. Now, imagine being the person who finds one. You're sorting through loose change, flipping through a roll of dimes, maybe just out of curiosity. And then, something catches your eye. A shine that's different. A detail that pops. A strike that looks impossibly clean. Or maybe you notice the coin looks off in a way you can't quite explain. That tiny difference could be the beginning of a very big discovery. Beyond rarity and errors, there's the legacy. The Roosevelt dime isn't just a coin, it's a tribute. After FDR's death in 1945, the nation needed a way to honor the man who guided it through both economic collapse and World War. The dime was chosen in his memory, not only for its usefulness but because of Roosevelt's connection to the March of Dimes campaign to fight polio. So every time you hold a dime, you're holding a piece of presidential history. And with the 1977 D version, that story deepens. It represents an era of transition, resilience, and untapped potential. So let's bring this all together. You've got a coin that's mass-produced but rarely perfect. A design that hasn't changed in decades but never gets old. A chance, just a chance, that your dime might be among the few that were preserved, protected, or printed with a twist. This isn't just collecting for fun. This is treasure hunting with real stakes, which brings us to one of the most unbelievable finds in modern dime collecting. Among all the 1977 D Roosevelt dimes ever struck, one was discovered in nearly flawless condition, graded at an extraordinary level by top professionals. Its surface shimmered without blemish. Its strike was impeccable. And when it reached the hands of serious collectors, jaws dropped. That tiny coin, with a D tucked beside the date, and nothing but a quiet history behind it, had skyrocketed in value, not to $100, not to $1,000, not even $10,000. This dime, yes, a 10-cent piece, was valued at a staggering $81,000. Let that sink in. A dime. One you could have passed by, flipped into a tip jar, or dropped on the floor without noticing. Worth more than most people's cars. More than some people's college tuition. More than you'd ever expect from something so ordinary. So here's your takeaway: never underestimate the coins in your hand. Check your change. Open those old jars. Dig through that forgotten drawer of coins you've been meaning to sort. Because hidden among the everyday are rare survivors, coins like the 1977 D Roosevelt dime, that tell a richer story and carry a value no one would expect. Number 3 on our list today may be the most unexpected of them all. It's modern, it's common, and at first glance, it doesn't stand out. But don't let appearances fool you, because the 1997 Roosevelt dime with the Philadelphia P mint mark is hiding a secret. And the closer you look, the more you realize that even in the era of mass production and digital currency, treasures still exist in the palm of your hand. Let's set the stage. It's 1997. The internet is booming. Bill Clinton is president. Titanic is breaking box office records. And at the Philadelphia Mint, nearly 1 billion Roosevelt dimes are being produced. That's right, almost 992 million of them. These dimes are punched out of clad metal at high speed, designed to be as uniform, efficient, and forgettable as possible. They aren't being made to be collected. They're being made to be spent, tossed, and forgotten, but among those hundreds of millions, a few broke the mold. The Roosevelt dime had already been circulating for over 50 years by 1997. Its design hadn't changed since its introduction in 1946, President Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile on the obverse, and the iconic torch, olive branch, and oak branch trio on the reverse, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. The design is classic, stable, and instantly familiar. But familiarity doesn't mean insignificance. In fact, it's the subtle details that separate a 10-cent coin from a 5-figure collector's item. Like many modern coins, most 1997 P dimes were born to be ordinary. They rolled off machines, clattered into bags, and went directly into circulation. Some were scratched on day one. Others wore down from decades in cash registers and vending machines. But a small number, very small, were struck in near-perfect condition and then forgotten. These are the survivors, coins that escaped damage, remained untouched, and sat quietly, waiting to be rediscovered. Condition is everything. In the world of coin collecting, a Roosevelt dime in mint state, especially one graded MS-67 or higher, is already rare. But a coin with full details, strong luster, and pristine surfaces? That's what collectors dream about. Grading companies examine these coins under magnification, looking for even the smallest flaw. Only the absolute best receive top scores. And from nearly 1 billion coins, maybe only a few dozen reach that level. Then, there are the unexpected variations, minting errors that turn everyday coins into conversation pieces. While the 1997 P isn't known for widespread errors, isolated anomalies have surfaced: off-center strikes, double dies, weak edge reads, and planchet defects. These flaws, caused during the intense minting process, are extremely hard to replicate. They give each flawed coin a unique signature, like a fingerprint in metal, but the real intrigue with the 1997 P isn't just the potential for error coins, it's the near-mythical examples that have survived in virtually untouched, flawless condition. In a sea of billions, imagine finding a single dime with no blemishes, full bands on the torch, a mirror-like finish, and crisp, sharp details. That's not just luck. That's a discovery, and think about this, this is a coin most of us grew up with. It's not from the 1800s. It doesn't contain silver. It's clad, modern, and still being used today. That's what makes it even more remarkable. The value isn't in the metal. It's in the preservation. It's in the story. It's in the fact that out of all the dimes struck in 1997, one single Roosevelt dime from Philadelphia stood out as a perfect specimen, a coin that somehow escaped damage, time, and handling. It became a symbol of modern rarity. Most people wouldn't even glance at a 1997 dime. But collectors? They know better. They check the surfaces. They study the strike. They look for those full torch bands, the telltale sign that the reverse die struck perfectly. They know that even in a modern coin, there's room for greatness. And they're willing to pay for it, because eventually, one of those dimes would do the unthinkable. A single 1997 P Roosevelt dime, struck with perfection, untouched by wear, graded at the absolute highest tier, and preserved in stunning condition, was sold for an extraordinary amount. That 10-cent coin, one you or I might have spent without a second thought, was valued at a jaw-dropping $58,000. Yes, you heard that right. A clad, modern, relatively young dime, worth more than $50,000. Not for its metal. Not for its age. But because it survived, because it stood out, because someone looked closely enough to recognize what they had. So if you're thinking modern coins are too new to be valuable, think again. That cup holder in your car. That drawer full of spare change. That old roll of dimes you almost took to the bank, it might be hiding something more, because value isn't always obvious. And history isn't always old. Sometimes, the most surprising stories are the ones that begin with a dime you thought was ordinary. And now, we've arrived at number 4, the last rare dime of today's list. It's the final stop on our journey through hidden treasures, and perhaps the most unexpected of them all. It doesn't come from a distant decade. It isn't old, it isn't silver, and it didn't survive wars or depressions. It's something far more surprising, a coin that might still be lying unnoticed in a kitchen drawer, buried in a cup of spare change, or quietly waiting in a sealed bankroll. The 2016 Roosevelt dime from the Philadelphia Mint. At first glance, it seems completely ordinary. It's the kind of coin you use without thinking twice. 10 cents. Pocket change. But behind this simple appearance lies one of the most astonishing modern coin stories in recent memory. The year was 2016. America was in the heart of a digital age. Technology ruled. Paper money was disappearing, and coins were becoming more of a backup than a necessity. Still, the U.S. Mint continued producing coins in staggering numbers. In Philadelphia alone, more than 1.5 billion Roosevelt dimes were struck that year. That's enough to give every person in the United States at least 4 of them, but in that sea of production, something remarkable happened. Out of the millions and millions of dimes produced in lightning-fast batches, a few slipped through that were different. They weren't scratched. They weren't dull. They didn't show the bruises of bouncing through cash registers or being rattled in someone's pocket. These few coins came out clean. Sharp. Bright. Almost like they were never meant to be spent. These weren't accidents. These were moments of perfect minting, where the dies were still fresh, the pressure was just right, and the planchets flawless. These few coins, untouched and preserved, carried an uncommon level of detail. Roosevelt's profile appeared with depth and texture, the torch on the reverse struck with a clarity rarely seen, especially in modern clad coinage. Now, let's talk about the details. The design itself hadn't changed since 1946. Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile on the obverse was a tribute to a president who had guided the nation through crisis and personal illness. The reverse, showing the torch between the olive and oak branches, still stood for liberty, peace, and strength. It's a simple but powerful design that never needed an update, and yet, in the case of this 2016 dime, it was not the design but the condition that made it so special. You see, in numismatics, condition is everything. Coins are graded on the Sheldon scale, from 1 to 70. Most coins that make it into circulation grade somewhere in the 20s or 30s. If they're lucky. But when a coin hits the high 60s, especially MS-68 or MS-69, it crosses into an elite tier. That kind of quality is difficult to achieve, especially with modern coins meant for daily use. Now add in one more layer, full bands dot on the torch. The horizontal bands often blur or fade due to weak strikes or worn dies. But when those bands appear clearly and completely, it tells collectors something important, that the coin was struck with full strength and precision. A full bands designation turns a nice coin into a desirable one. It elevates value significantly and places the coin in a much smaller club. The 2016 P. Roosevelt Dime that stunned collectors had it all. Impeccable surfaces. Unmatched strike. Brilliant luster. And those crisp, unmistakable full bands. One expected a modern clad coin, something barely 10 years old, to perform so strongly at auction. It had no historical event tied to it. No rare metal content. No major error. What it had, simply, was perfection, and perfection, in the world of coins, is everything. It's what separates a coin that's worth face value from one that makes headlines. It's what makes someone stare a little longer at something they once thought was common. It's what transforms a simple dime into a museum-worthy artifact. Now imagine this, a coin that likely came from a standard roll, sat untouched in a mint set, or was pulled aside by someone who noticed it just seemed different. Someone who saw the luster. The detail. The sharpness. They sent it in for grading. Experts examined it under magnification, scanned every surface, studied every curve and line, and then confirmed what few would believe: this dime, struck in a modern age, was a near-perfect example of minting excellence, and when that dime was finally sold, its value didn't just raise eyebrows. It turned heads. That 10-cent coin, minted in the billions, was valued at an astonishing $24,000, for a coin that most of us would have spent without thinking twice. For a piece of change that many wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. But that's the beauty of coins. Their value isn't always tied to their age. Or their metal. Or even their rarity in the traditional sense. Sometimes, the most valuable coins are the ones that were made perfectly and somehow preserved that way. So, before you drop your change into a vending machine or let it sit forgotten in your cup holder, take a second look. You never know what's in your hands. That shiny 2016 dime with a tiny P might be more than just spare change. It might be the next big discovery. The next legendary coin. The next unbelievable story in the world of modern numismatics.